A new chapter is being written in relations between Iran and much of the rest of the world, with hard work beginning this week to try to implement the 6-month interim nuclear deal just reached this weekend. But as talks begin on a longer-term comprehensive agreement, potential obstacles are starting to appear.
Washington has been keen to highlight the restrictions put on Iran's nuclear program, which include neutralizing its stockpile of near 20% uranium and halting the enrichment of uranium above 5% purity, which is well below the threshold needed to make nuclear weapons. The US faces some opposition to the agreement. Israel have called it an historic mistake, and there's criticism closer to home too.
We've trusted the Iranians before, just like the North Koreans, on nuclear issues, and what have we gotten for it? They continue to hide their development of these weapons.
While all sides came away smiling from the negotiating table in Geneva, this is only a temporary deal, and diplomats now have 6 months to negotiate a longer-term agreement. The road ahead is uncertain, but in Iran the deal will be seen as a considerable achievement for a government which is just a few months old.
Under the deal, Iran won't be allowed to enrich uranium to more than 5%, which is enough for power and medical use, but not enough to make a nuclear weapon. Any uranium it already has over 20% enriched will be destroyed or diluted. Equipment capable of enriching weapons-grade uranium will be switched off. In return, economic sanctions that have severely hit Iran's interests will be eased. That could give the economy a boost of $6 to $7 billion during the 6 months of the agreement.
Nothing is possible until we solve the nuclear problem.
Secretary of State John Kerry took to the U.S. broadcast networks to sell the Geneva deal to his public.
And we believe it now opens the door to our going into the larger, more comprehensive arrangement by which Iran will have to prove that its program is really peaceful.
It's the same pitch he'll be giving to the Congress, which was preparing to adopt a new set of tougher sanctions as early as next month.
I think you're going to see on Capitol Hill again a bipartisan effort to try to make sure that this is not the final agreement, because people know this administration is strong on announcements, very long on announcements, but very short on follow-through.
The deal won support from some key Democratic senators like Carl Levin, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. He called it a realistic, practical way to freeze Iran's program for 6 months while in pursuit of what he called, quote, a long-range end to its nuclear ambition.
Clearly, it's only 12 hours or so since we were in Geneva, and I particularly want to pay tribute to the work of Secretary Kerry, who has been so determined throughout the negotiations with Iran to make sure that this is a robust deal, that everything that should be covered is covered, that every commitment that we wanted from Iran is as strong as it should be. And he has done that, and I really pay tribute to his persistence and his leadership in doing that.
Now the really hard part begins, and that is the effort to get the comprehensive agreement, which will require enormous steps in terms of verification, transparency, and accountability.
Iran agreed to suspend enriching uranium beyond levels needed in power stations for the next 6 months. That's in exchange for a partial lifting of sanctions to the tune of €5 billion. For the Iranian president, the deal recognizes the country's nuclear rights by allowing it to continue uranium enrichment, which he insists is geared towards civilian, not military purposes.
In the middle of the night, Secretary of State John Kerry and the Iranian foreign minister, along with foreign ministers from 5 other world powers, all smiles in Geneva, Switzerland, as they announced the deal in the wee hours. President Obama then making a rare Saturday night statement from the White House.
Today, that diplomacy opened up a new path toward a world that is more secure. A future in which we can verify that Iran's nuclear program is peaceful and that it cannot build a nuclear weapon.
But Israel says the deal makes the world a more dangerous place.
For years, the international community has demanded that Iran cease all uranium enrichment. Now, for the first time, the international community has formally consented that Iran continue its enrichment of uranium.
Iran is counting this as a major victory.
The outcome of these negotiations is that the world powers have recognized Iran's nuclear rights.
Israel still insists it might attack Iran to stop it developing a nuclear weapon, but critics of the government here say it's placed too much faith in military strength.
There are limits to what you can do with your military strength, and we reached these limits already. We have power we cannot use militarily because we are too weak diplomatically.
Iran's stockpile of 20% enriched uranium, which puts it within striking distance of having material pure enough for a nuclear weapon, will be scrapped, and it can't keep installing the centrifuges used for enrichment. In exchange, it will get relief from sanctions that could mean billions of dollars in revenue.
Some of those waiting at Tehran's airport held posters of President Hassan Rouhani, the architect of the country's initiative in pushing for the talks. The agreement, which curbs Iran's more sensitive nuclear activity, its higher-grade enrichment of uranium, in exchange for initial sanctions relief, is being seen as a victory by both sides. Most sanctions imposed against Iran were hitting the economy. What they've achieved leads to the release of some Iranian assets. I think everything's going to get better. Today we could see that on the streets already. Even the currency's gone up.